He ordered that he be committed to Mountjoy Prison and remain there until he purges his contempt or until further order of the court.
Instagram says it disagrees with how a €405 million fine from the Data Protection Commission was calculated and intends to appeal it. It also says the inquiry was focused on old settings that were updated over a year ago. The company says it has since released many new features to help keep teens safe and their information private. The fine had been handed down for breaking the privacy rights of children. Liz Truss will enter Downing Street tomorrow facing an extremely challenging in-tray. She's been confirmed as the next Prime Minister, although she didn't secure as big a share as expected in the Tory leadership race. It's 7:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Flying you to over 200 destinations is our business. What you do there is yours.
Showers or longer spells of rain will spread nationwide tomorrow with some heavy bursts expected. Highest temperatures of 16 to 20 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Welcome along to Monday night's Off the Ball. We're going to be taking a look at the fallout from the weekends, the VAR controversy across various Premier League matches at the weekend. Pat Nevin is with us at 7:30. Pat was also at Parkhead to watch Celtic sweep Rangers aside in the first Glasgow derby of the season. The perfect preparation for the Hoops ahead of playing Real Madrid in the Champions League this week. Tom English is also going to be giving us the perspective from Scotland after that very comprehensive 4-0 victory for the Hoops. We'll be talking rugby with Craig Ray, South African-based journalist, just after 8 o'clock. The Rugby Championship is now very delicately poised with 2 rounds of games to go, with just 1 point between the top side New Zealand even and the bottom side Australia. South Africa bouncing back the world champions with a victory in Sydney against Australia at the weekend. And also on the football show and across the show, we'll be looking forward to tomorrow's World Cup qualifier between the Republic of Ireland and Slovakia. Ireland are assured of a place in the playoffs for the World Cup, but their position in those playoffs could be improved with a victory against Slovakia tomorrow. So all that to look forward to between now and 10. Delighted to say Dan McDonnell's here with me. How are you getting on, Dan?
Hi, Will.
Before we bring Richie in, you were at the game at Tallaght Stadium. You wrote about it last week as well, your experience of being a different perspective, not being in the press box but actually being in the stands itself. And Vera Powell's been speaking about this today, that there were pockets of empty seats because people got the tickets early and didn't use them.
Yeah, no, I did write about this in the Independent on Saturday, and yeah, like it does seem to have become a thing in the sense that, you know, the fallout from the game, it hasn't just been sort of, you know, positive euphoria at the result, you know, which is obviously, you know, justified in the circumstances, but also a sort of a broader discussion about what happened here. Because certainly I have to say, like, as you know, I was in the crowd. I sort of, that was the idea of the piece actually I was going to do, just to see what's the mood like, and probably had the idea in my head of thinking this is going to be a nice sort of this will be a nice feel-good piece about sort of what it's like, you know, sort of behind the scenes almost at one of these games. And like, if you're in the press box, you don't really experience that, as you know, like it's a different, you know, you're sort of removed from the match day experience. So I probably thought it was going to be this nice sort of happy story, but actually it was a little bit, I don't know, a little bit underwhelming in some ways, or a little bit flat in some ways. And I think there was a couple of issues with the ticketing, like clearly the fact that there was people didn't show, and then even as well, I don't know, people were sort of arriving. There was an order over the tannoy for people to like sit in their assigned seats, but naturally there was a lot of empty seats, so some people that go to games regularly were sort of applying a bit of common sense.
They
and
pushed into the middle,
yeah, push into the middle or whatever. But then there was people coming along, and there was like security guards, like sort of cinema ushers, you know, showing people along to seat 14 and 15 and then evicting people. So like, you know, someone else was in my seat and I was in that scenario of, well, I see my seat is occupied, I'm not going to go and take it, but then every time someone's walking down the steps, you're like, we're waiting to be moved. We're waiting to be moved. And like, people were talking about the atmosphere being flat in the early part of the game. I honestly think a big part of it was just all the sort of comings and goings of people around. So there's just a few things like that, and clearly I think there was huge interest in this game. Like, you have to make an announcement that it's sold out inside 30 minutes, which sounds great, but they've had this with a couple of the games in Tallaght, particularly women's games, women's international, I think even the FEI Cup last year, and I mean, they're still very good crowds. Like, it was a record crowd the other day, and I mean, the crowd that was there was still substantial, but clearly there's some kind of issue in terms of how it's been handled and how they, you know, can process sort of people not showing how they can notify. I know Vera Pauw's point seems to be just people are the people are taking tickets and not really thinking of the consequences of not showing up. Is it part of the
issue that some of the tickets are going out to say group tickets, whether that be to club season ticket holders, and then it's about making maybe that transfer of the tickets a little bit easier to actually pass them on to someone else?
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And I know the FAI are saying they haven't been sending out free tickets, but I think there would have been, obviously, as you mentioned, sort of grouped tickets and stuff. And like the way I suppose the nature of things at the moment, like events, like you will always have no shows late. You're always going to expect that some people won't show. Like we're still, you could have COVID or some sort of things happening that sort of knock out groups, and there's always the danger that could be the case. But it's just, I don't know, I think as well, they've now reached a point where it's fantastic. Like they've got the numbers going. Like the first step was to get to the numbers. Like that's point A. That's like your start point. But like point B now is to probably make the experience a bit better. Do they need to look at maybe having a regular package for people for the women's games so they could sort of sit together and like, I don't know, it was just like, it was for a game of actual serious importance, and you're hearing people talking afterwards about the place being rocking, and that wasn't the case there. It was after the full-time whistle. It was brilliant scenes, but during the match
some
itself,
of that down to the nervy performance as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think of course the match contributes. There's absolutely no shadow of a doubt, and also as well, it's always going to be a different dynamic. Like I think you can go there with your, you have an idea. Like I was sort of making this point in the piece, it's like, a good atmosphere is like, it's subjective really. Like to some people a good atmosphere is like Rovers in Tala this Thursday for the Conference League. It's going to be heaving and it's going to be sort of tribal and sort of aggressive, that sort of like type of atmosphere, which some people it's like very alluring, and for other people maybe it wouldn't be for them. And like this is a different thing. It's always going to be a lot of young faces at the games, so it's always going to be, you're not expecting it to be comparable maybe to sort of some men's games you would have at the venue, and that's just being realistic about it. But in saying that, I think there's probably ways of just selling it, and they have to probably look at their ticketing stuff to figure out, is there ways to do this better, that even to get sort of grouped fans who go regularly to matches all together in one area might even just make the noise, make it a bit better, because it was a big game, and depending on how things go, they could end up having another big game in Tala, and you sort of wanted to be sort of, to feel like and the players themselves have obviously utilised it to make home advantage by how they've performed. But as I said, I think there's probably room for improvement there to make it an even better experience going to games. And I think it's healthy to have a discussion about this now, like, and that certain things have been highlighted, because before the issue was people didn't want to take the tickets. Now, you've disappointed people, but they can't get into the ground. Like that's obviously an issue. Yeah, we'll be joined by Asher Riley from Slovakia a little bit later on. She's been getting the feeling ahead of the game tomorrow, which has importance for the Republic of Ireland when it comes to the seeding for the playoffs, and potentially being able to jump past one round of the playoffs for the finals in Australia and New Zealand. Richie McCormack is with us as well. How are you getting on, Rich?
Lads, you well?
Look, I know you want to talk about the Newsround and all the news of the day, but the real news of the day is one I spotted in the back of the Irish Daily Star before we came on air. It won't be Roddy Collins taking over Bohemians, Richie. He has ruled himself out, and the reason he's ruled himself out, it's not the right time. He says he wouldn't get the freedom and support from the Gypsies board to turn the club into trophy winners, and that would frustrate me.
Yeah, he's got a book tour to look after as well. Well, let's not forget that, one of the great works of fiction that will come out this summer.
Don't you pretend that you're not going to pick up the Rod Fodder. You are going to be in.
100%. I'll be first in the queue down the bookshop to get that. That's I'm not even waiting for Christmas for that to come out. But yeah, it's interesting where they go from here. Derek Pender surely put a good case for himself forward on Friday night to be the next permanent boss. I know Jim Crawford's name has been floated around to do with the vacancy there as well, but they did what they needed to do on Friday night, which was get a good result and ensure that things don't, descend into a rot between now and the end of the season. I don't think there's a real massive danger of that now. They got 3 potentially, if they get through obviously the Shells game. They got cup ties to look ahead to, and it could well still end on a bright note for both.
Yeah, I'm very fond of Roddy. One of my first jobs in journalism was ghostwriting Roddy's column,
which I'd say was good fun.
Which was a good experience for a couple of years. Would have spent a lot of time talking to him, and would have been on air with him here. To be fair, I'm not sure he would be a contender for the Bowes job at the moment. I'm shocked. I think he might might accept that, but I mean, again, the question is there to be asked. I mean, he is synonymous with Bowes, so it's natural that I suppose it might go that way.
I assume, Dan, if you were the ghostwriter of the piece, and you're obviously not his ghostwriter anymore, that's the first question you would have asked him on the phone for this.
Well, the Bowes job is up. I mean, it's as sort of Richie alludes to the fact. There's various names being mentioned. I mean, I've heard there's great interest in the job. Like, I think there's going to be some.
Is there anything in the Jim Crawford?
So that was me writing that on Friday. So I suppose I better say that there is. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. Sort of doubting the veracity of my own stories. Like, no, I think there's no doubt like that his name has been put into the mix. But in some ways, that piece was maybe more so about the fact that his under-21 contract, bizarrely enough, for someone who's playing in a big game in Tala later this month, hasn't been resolved. And I think it's more a case of all of a sudden maybe people in the FAI are thinking, well, there's now jobs coming up. This one would be quite attractive. I think people at Bowes have probably been told he's a good candidate, but I think probably deep down people would know that his preference and like he would want to stay in that under-21 job. Like, they could be in the European Championships like next year. So to be honest, I don't think that one probably will happen.
A lot of his future will be determined by those two legs against.
Yeah, I think he's done enough to get the contract anyway. As I said, I think the most likely scenario there is that he'll stay with the 21s. But the FAI, even with Stephen Kenny and even with Vera Pauw's situation, they seem to have this feeling now, which I know in the past, like, you would have had to go with the FAI for handing out contracts too early, before a big game, and then it feels bad afterwards. So I'm conscious of being slightly hypocritical, when you've been critical of that before. But there comes a point when you have, I kind of wonder, when you have maybe local candidates who are, probably in the case of, say, Kenny and Crawford, that's just my opinion. Like, I kind of wonder when people, you're not necessarily going to have other international teams coming for them, that do you feel in some way you can just put this on the long finger a bit more, where we've had the Martin O'Neill to Stoke thing in the past and various things like that. You were afraid of people being picked off, whereas maybe is it a sense that the FA hold the power a small bit with these people? I don't know. That's just an opinion, but it's a slightly unsatisfactory situation. But to go back to the point, I don't think Roddy's going to be the next manager of Bowes, but he's ruled himself out of it anyway. But they're going to have some pretty big names, I think, putting their name in for it, because it's a big job. And look at Duffer's in the league now, and I think I wouldn't be shocked if there was other sort of high profile people might start to have a look at the Bowes one and think, yeah, maybe that's tempting.
The Newsround is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Richie, I assume we're starting with the Republic of Ireland women's team getting ready for that World Cup qualifier tomorrow.
Yeah, head coach Vera Pauw has no new injury concerns ahead of tomorrow's qualifier with Slovakia. The squad trained this afternoon in Senets, augmented by Wexford youth midfielder Evan Clancy. Ireland secured a playoff via last week's win over Finland, but Louise Quinn says a win over the Slovaks is key to skipping to the second round of those playoffs.
For us, there's plenty to play for. There's also in the team, there's plenty to play for in terms of making sure you're in the next starting 11 for potential playoff, where that may be, for Vera to see us and the coaches to see us in the best of our light. So we're constantly competing. We constantly want to send messages to other teams, and about the strength and depth of our team. So for us, it's we're thrilled to get a playoff, but now we have this. We have another chance to make it even better, make it even a better playoff spot, get that extra bonus for the hard work that we've done, and to keep pushing through in this group like we always have. So for us, there's never complacency in the games. There's always so much to play for as a team and personally.
We'll be hearing in more detail from Louise Quinn a bit later, but Vera Pauw is also talking, Richie.
Yeah, she's criticised those, as you mentioned, who bought tickets for but didn't attend last week's game with the Finns. Despite the match being a confirmed sellout, pockets of empty seats were clearly visible at Tallaght Stadium. And Pauw says the ticket holders can't be forced to attend, but must be aware of the consequences of their decisions.
The thing is, what do you do? Do you make it? Yeah, it's our marketing department, they're dealing with it. But what do? We want to have it accessible for everybody. You can make the tickets more expensive, but then you put a lot of pressure on the people who maybe not have that much available, and you want everybody to be able to attend. So I think, to my honest feeling, I come it comes back to the decency of the people who buy the tickets. That they know that there's thousands of girls crying at home, literally crying at home because they couldn't go to the stadium, and that you take responsibility when you buy a ticket.
I think that was the frustration, Dan, was just that there was such a demand for the tickets with the nature of the fixture, and people just couldn't get their hands on one. Yeah, no, like and I think like what VAR says is the no but a point really. Like if you make it more expensive, then people are probably more inclined to think about going. But then when you do, you're not going to drop out as easily. But the flip side is, and it was obvious the other day. Like in fact, like people that were around me, particularly in the first half, like I don't think they'd been to a football match before, and like that's as I said, that's a win. Like that's the whole point of like attracting new faces. So just the whole routine of match day, you could tell it was all new to them. So that's a terrific thing. So if you put up the prices, do you risk losing some of that sort of people's willingness to sort of experiment? Well, if the price is a fiver, someone may well go, it's only a fiver. Yeah. That's basically it. Like people sign up with great intentions, and then you get closer to the time, and it's like, life gets in the way. It's a bit of a trek in some people's mind. Like Tallaght, it seems like a long way away. So that's clearly what happened. Yeah. Leanne Kiernan staying at Liverpool, Rich.
Yeah, she is. She's part of the squad, of course, this week, and she signed a new contract with Liverpool. The 23-year-old scores 13 goals last season as Liverpool won the Women's Championship to gain promotion back to the WSL.
Lee Mason's not going to be working on the VAR for the Premier League this weekend. He's been stood down after the controversy, one of many, in the Newcastle game against Crystal Palace at the weekend. But VAR, and it's now been referred for more conversations about what happened last weekend, very much in the headlines out of the weekend, Richie.
Yeah, the man formerly responsible for overseeing referees in English football says officials currently are being hung out to dry by VAR controversies. Keith Hackett, who was the general manager of the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, says the technology is not being operated well enough. The organisation effectively admitted mistakes were made when goals were ruled out at Chelsea and Newcastle on Saturday. However, former Premier League official Dermot Gallagher doesn't feel VAR should be scrapped.
I talk about half full, half empty glasses. Mine's half full. Think of all the decisions that it's rectified. Think of all the decisions it's got right. The offside at Brentford, last season that goal would have been disallowed, or before VAR that would have been disallowed. Quite clearly, an error, an understandable error. Things like that. The ones that we talk about that haven't been given, they would have never been given without VAR. So I think it's a matter of, like we saw today with two decisions, where are we going to go, how are we going to develop, how are we going to make it better? And that's what I say, make it better, don't kick it out.
Dermot Gallagher there using his Sky Sports voice as opposed to his off-the-ball accent when he's on with us. But the EFL have also been talking about technology of a different type, not VAR, but goal line technology has come up there, Richie.
Yeah, the EFL saying it's incredibly frustrated that goal line technology failed in a championship match yesterday, denying Huddersfield a goal against Blackpool. They went on to lose the match 1-0. Operators Hawkeye have told the EFL that multiple factors stopped the ball from being tracked correctly, so a signal wasn't sent to the referee. The Football League's ordering a full review, but the result still stands.
You can understand the frustration here, Dan. We're going to talk about VAR in a lot more detail probably with Pat Nevin in a few minutes' time, but in the case of goal line technology, this should be the really simple one. There's meant to be the sensor, goes over the line, and it's meant to be correct every time. Well, I mean, you've had Hawkeye here this summer, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like it's the one thing you're sort of relying upon. I suppose if you watch tennis and stuff as well, you learn to trust the system and think, well, at least this part is covered, and then all of a sudden now it's like, I don't know. I mean, well, once it gets undermined, though, you start to question all sorts of decisions that were made previously, and could it have been incorrectly aligned on different occasions before that? Oh, listen, conspiracy theorists dream now. To be honest, like as in, teams who feel wrong. Yeah, no, totally wrong. Because like the whole nature of being a football supporter or a sports supporter sometimes is to feel the world is against you. So sometimes technology removes. The whole point of technology is to try and make that sort of process not impacted by like some kind of human preference or urge, and now people have reason to sort of start speculating that in some way. They can convince there's something going on against them. I don't know. I mean, I suppose you think of like the Huddersfield one you mentioned. Like it just seems somewhat freakish. Like how many instances of that in recent years can you recall? I can't think of too many. It might have been one other one. I feel like there was an issue with that in English football. So I don't know. Like it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's, as I think Dermot Gallagher's point today, think of how many decisions it is rectified correctly.
I'd probably be more closer to his opinion than thinking you scrap it or something.
Rich, did you catch one of the more interesting technology debates that's come out of the weekend as well? Did you see the clip of Lee Dixon, who was on American TV?
No, I have not.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's worth checking out. So the conversation is basically between himself and Peter Drury. They're doing the Man United Arsenal game, and they're pointing out that the sun is in the eyes of Ramsdale during the game and that he's not wearing a cap. And then during the middle of the conversation, Lee Dixon says, allegedly, we have climate change at the moment.
Right.
Which kind of opens all sorts of Pandora's boxes when he was
Yeah,
trying
it
to
does. I didn't realise climate change suddenly affected actual sunshine and it being in the eyes. Maybe, the gradient and the angle at which the sun has reached people's eyes has changed. Maybe it hasn't.
Nor did I.
I'm sure Lee Dixon clearly knows more than us, Will. So
every day is a school day. And the funny part was, there was a cap in use just the week before. Henderson was wearing one when Spurs missed the penalty against Nottingham Forest. He was wearing the hat when he saved the penalty.
Henderson wore one as well while playing for Forest against West Ham. Started the second half there. I know because I did commentary in the game. And he made a save, and I think he lost it in the process of making the save and then just ditched it. So whatever use hats are, I'm not too sure. I'm always just reminded of David James wearing a hat in the early days of the Premier League, and that never ended well. So
yeah, always nostalgic. GA goalkeepers used to wear them all the time, and now they've stopped at this stage. From people who wear hats all the time, let's go to the US Open tennis then.
Before we get to the US Open, we'll actually, Dan could probably chime in on this too, a bit of disciplinary news from the League of Ireland that came in just as we went on air. Sligo are facing an appearance before an FAI disciplinary control unit this week. It arises out of Adam McDonnell's appearance against Dundalk, when allegedly suspended. They say he started in midfield that day, lasted nearly an hour before being replaced by Max Mata. Sligo won the game by 2-0, but Sligo say the potential sanction of an adverse finding is an overturning of that result. So they'll be represented legally, of course, in that hearing, they say, this week. So it looks like Sligo could be losing 3 points in the SSE Electricity Premier Division.
Yeah, no, I actually did hear something about that just coming in. So I'm not sure. I think Richie's probably read the announcement or how it's been handled. It just seems to be some issue as regards correspondence, as regards suspensions and how it was sent out. And I think Sligo Rovers will have to explain, I suppose, how they managed to. How they ended up in this situation, because I think there was a date of August 29th, I think, where a suspension list goes out, and he was due to be suspended from that date, but he played that day. But I'm guessing any case will go into the back and forth of the correspondence. But the bottom line, I suppose, is there's a race for European money going on at the moment, which is very important to all of the clubs involved. You're talking about sort of the couple of $100,000 at stake. I mean, Sligo this year, look what they got from Europe. Now they're probably long shots to get themselves into the top four. But also you'd imagine probably even Derry City and St Pat's, who are looking to get in and to vie with Dundalk, will not be too chuffed with this whole situation. So you can always do without that. The old registration, they talk about Roddy Collins and sort of 20 years ago in his pomp. That was around the time we had Ollie Byrne and he was in his pomp, and all this stuff would dominate entire seasons. We could do without that, I think.
Yeah, 3 points could be very important, particularly if they go into Dundalk's column between now and the end of the season. The US Open tennis then, Richie, what's been happening?
Yeah, men's 9th seed Andrei Rublev is through to the US Open quarterfinals for the third time in his career. The Russian beat Cameron Norrie this evening 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, and he'll play the winner of tonight's clash, Rafa Nadal and Francis Tiafoe. 3rd seed Carlos Alcaraz goes up against the 2014 US Open champion Marin Cilic, and the 11th seed Yannick Sinner faces Russia's Ilya Ivashka tonight. Women's 8th seed Jessica Pegula has completed a 6-3, 6-2 win over Petra Kvitova this evening. Top seed Iga Swiatek is currently down a break to Jule Niemeyer, the Wimbledon quarter-finalist, in the first set of their last 16 contest. Tiafoe and Nadal just out on the Arthur Ashe, we should mention as well. The 2016 finalist Karolina Pliskova goes up against Victoria Azarenka tonight, and Danielle Collins plays the 6th seed Arina Sabalenka.
And just before we finish the news round, Richie, 2 stories affecting France in the World Cup, one in rugby and one in football.
Yep, France's plans for next year's Rugby World Cup have hit a snag. Virimi Vakatawa has been forced to retire from rugby due to an unspecified medical problem. The Fijian-born centre won 31 caps for France, and one of his 10 international tries came against Ireland in the 2020 Six Nations. A statement from his club Racing today says Vakatawa is unable to continue his career in France due to a medical committee ban from the LNR. Vakatawa is likely to explain the situation at a press conference tomorrow. And as you mentioned there, Paul Pogba, now a major doubt for France's defence of the World Cup. The Juventus midfielder must undergo surgery on the meniscus in his right knee. Pogba is going to be out for up to 2 months as a result, cutting it fine to make Didier Deschamps' squad for Qatar.
All right, Dan is going to stay with me. Richie, thanks a million.
Nice and gents.
We'll be talking to Pat Nevin in a few minutes, but that's the news round.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
This is your chance to win big money. The cash machine has given away almost €2 million so far in 2022. Ellen Shine in Cork is our latest winner. She was out shopping in Cork today when Barry called with the cash machine. Luckily for her, she had the number written